Hi, I'm Kevin Knudson. I'm professor of mathematics here at the University of Florida. I've been here for 7 years. I was hired at UF to be the director of the University Honors Program. And I did that for 5 years and then decided after some experiences teaching mathematics here that I really wanted to get back to the department and try to have an impact over there. So I moved back to the math department in 2014 and I'm now the associate chair. That's a good question. You know, I think the first thing to do is to be clear about it. You know, when you walk into a classroom and you know, maybe you're feeling some resistance from the students, which often happens, you have to break it down and say, look, here's where you're going to need this. Here's why it's important. But more than that, you have to show them that mathematics is beautiful. It's everywhere. I mean, I'm sitting in a garden, and as I was walking around, I was taking a look, and immediately I look at the plants and I see the symmetry in them. Or, you know, I start counting the numbers of petals on the flowers because those numbers tend to be Fibonacci numbers. I mean, there's all sorts of mathematics everywhere you look. And I think we've made a mess of it in some sense in the schools, K through 12, of what we do to teach students. You know, we've divorced mathematics from the original motivation. You know, mathematics began as trying to navigate, trying to understand the stars, trying to figure out how the planets work and all of that. And there's really some beautiful geometry and interesting mathematics there, and it was driven by a problem. And anymore, we've taken the problems out of it for a while, and we show students, well, here's quadratic equations, and here's what you do with them. Okay, so what? Why do we care about quadratic equations? Well, I'll tell you why we care about them. You know, your headlights on your car are parabolic mirrors, and those equations represent, you know, quadratic equations represent the shape of that thing. And we need those to make light go in a certain way, and those things have certain properties that really, that are important. So the idea to make mathematics engaging is to, I think, really make students see why this matters. Why it's going to be important to them, and then also just, you know, try to be clear when you explain these things. I've had a lot of practice, actually. I'm married to an artist, and my wife always claimed that she was no good at mathematics. And actually, I come across this all the time. Sort of every mathematician has this story of, you know, going to a cocktail party, and the cocktail party goes like this. You meet somebody for the first time, they ask you what you do, you say, well, I'm a mathematician. And it's always, ugh, I hated math. Well, okay. What that really means is, I figured out, is that algebra was a stumbling block and from which the person never really recovered. So my wife, you know, being an artist, sort of leaned that way too. She sort of felt like, well, math is hard for me. Well, except it isn't. You know, she's a graphic designer. She's very visual in nature. And so, so I think, you know, over the years, just sort of trying to explain what I do, you know, in terms that anyone can understand, I've gotten her to realize that, you know what, you are actually pretty good at this stuff. So the trick is to have multiple ways of explaining things. You know, mathematics is often a problem of translation. You know, we have a physical or geometric situation that we're trying to understand. And what do we do with that? Well, we think about it a little bit, and we often translate things into equations. And then once we have those equations, we have some algebraic operations on them and things like that. And it's that translation step that is really the problem. So the trick is to really focus and develop ways of having multiple explanations, multiple different ways to explain things, so that students who maybe don't see the gritty algebra part can understand the overriding geometric picture. There's almost always a picture for everything in mathematics. I think that's another misconception, that mathematicians sit around playing with numbers all day. We really don't. I don't really think about numbers. I think about bigger structures and what those things are, what those objects are, how they relate to things around them. You know, what happens when you rotate and turn them and look at them from different points of view. If you can help students see that there might be different ways to get at a problem, instead of merely focusing on the one path to get to a correct answer, that's really the trick. So the physics department has this wonderful invention called the light board, and it allows you to stand and write on a piece of glass using fluorescent dry erase markers, and through the technology of shooting you through a mirror, the students then, the result is right reading. What I really like about it is it allows you to, create some videos where you're actually working problems at the board, so that students again see a person doing this. And sometimes I mess up. It's okay. It's important. Actually, that's another thing. It's important for students to see faculty make mistakes. We're not perfect. There is no secret. Okay. I thought about this question a lot. What's my little trick? I don't have a trick. My trick is I show up and I communicate to my students that I love mathematics. And my students will know this. They say it on their course evaluations. Wow, this guy really loves math. And if you do that, if you just show up and you're well prepared and you've thought about what you want to do and you have a clear plan for the lecture or the class or however you're doing it might be flipped, it might be interactive, whatever. If you show up with a clear plan and you're enthusiastic about it, they will follow you. That's the trick.